A beautifully written abstract of a life science paper will have two well-crafted logic loops. We have already located one logic loop in the abstract written by the Nobel Laureates. Can you identify the second one? As an author, I know that this second loop is more difficult to write than the first loop. So as a reader, when I find the second loop in an abstract, and when this loop is described well, I really appreciate its power and beauty. The second loop will make the abstract more reader-friendly and attractive. We will talk about it in today's episode. Hi everyone, welcome to the Foundational Skills in Life Sciences podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Synaptologica. We discuss the skills that life science scholars learn, use, and improve throughout professional activities. Your benefit is expressed in my motto, learn the skills, enjoy academic life. Last episode, we have been analyzing the abstract of the Milestone Article 1 of the 2023 Nobel Prize Laureates in Physiology or Medicine. It was written by the laureates, Dr. Katalin Karikó and Dr. Drew Weissman, and it was published in 2005 in the journal Immunity. I will show you a link to the paper in the episode description. In the last episode, episode 48, we analyzed the abstract of our Milestone Article 1. Specifically, sentences 3 through 7 in the 8-sentence abstract. We focused on two logical structures, both starting with sentence 3, the unknown component, and both ending with sentence 7, the conclusions component. In one logical structure, the story showed a linear and sequential progression of the structural components. The story proceeded down a straight line. In another logical structure, the story showed a loop. A loop was opened by raising a question as the unknown component, and the loop was closed by answering the question in the conclusions component. The loop structure was especially effective because we feel satisfied when we see that the major question, the unknown component, is answered by the conclusions component in the abstract. This was the first of the two loops. Today's episode. We are still in the sub-step, step 14-3, analyze each sentence of the abstract. We will talk about the second loop within the abstract of Milestone Article 1 of the 2023 Nobel Laureates. This is the paper that we have been reading together, and we will keep reading it together until we finish it. After hearing my opening today, I'm sure you're thinking, what is the second loop? Does it involve those components? Have you identified such a loop? I can find the second loop within the abstracts of some well-written papers. Definitely, I can find it in the abstract of our Milestone Article 1. Comment about the second loop. I will give you my thoughts about the second of the two loops in our abstract. This loop is opened by the first sentence, that is, sentence 1 of our abstract, that describes the background component. And the loop is closed by the last sentence, that is, sentence 8 of our abstract, that describes the implications component. Let's review the contents of the loop opening and loop closing sentences 1 and 8. We talked about their details 3 episodes ago in episode 46. Here's a brief statement of the essence. Sentence 1 says that when RNA enters a mammalian body, it will be recognized as foreign, and the RNA will trigger a so-called innate immune response within the body. Sentence 8 then says that whether the innate immune response is triggered might be determined by whether the RNA is rich with unmodified nucleosides, for example, as in the case of RNA derived from bacteria. In the initial reading phase, we read this abstract once or twice. Sentence 1 appeared to simply tell us, the readers, the broad background information. Sentence 1 started the story of the work, and its intention appeared to lead us to sentence 2 smoothly and logically. But after this initial reading phase, we can now appreciate more. Sentence 1 not only introduced background information to us, but it also posed a question, although indirectly. And this way, it opened the second loop. The question is mammalian versus bacterial. How does a mammalian innate immune system recognize bacterial entry into the body? Then sentence 8 gave an answer to this question. The mammalian innate immune system may recognize bacteria by the rich, unmodified nucleosides in bacterial RNA. And the sentence closed the second loop. This question was a large one. It was larger than the one posed in the sentence 3, which was the unknown component, and which was directly addressed in the work. Remember that in the last episode, episode 48, we talked about the first of the 2 loops in this abstract. It was opened by sentence 3 and closed by sentence 7. Sentence 3 asks a narrow, focused question, and sentence 7 answers it. Do modified RNAs avoid triggering immune responses? And the answer is clear yes. The first loop was smaller than the second loop. In the second loop, the question and its answer were broader, with more biological and evolutionary context than in the first loop. Before reading sentence 8 carefully, I did not know that sentence 1 was actually posing a question. In fact, sentence 1 did not take the form of a question. It looked like a simple statement of facts. But the author stated sentence 8, the implications component, clearly, and this would change sentence 1 into an indirect form of a question. Sentence 8 closed the second loop, and so sentence 1 must have opened the loop. And this statement of the implications is also supported by the title of the paper too. The latter half of the title says it explicitly. It is even broader than bacteria because the word bacteria is included in the word evolution. The latter half of the title says, quote, the impact of nucleoside modification and the evolutionary origin of RNA, close quote. This entire organization of the abstract is so beautiful. I have 2 comments as professor's viewpoints. Professor's viewpoint 1. To be able to close this second loop, which is a large loop, it is a great achievement in any paper. As I mentioned in the last episode, it is important for any paper to close the first loop, which is the smaller loop. The smaller loop is opened by the unknown component, that is the question, and it is closed by the conclusions component, that is the answer. This question-answer pair should be present in any abstract. It should be clearly visible in any abstract, and it carries the most important message of any abstract. In the smaller loop, the scope of the question is made narrow. This is intentional. The authors intentionally make the question to be narrow so that its answer becomes focused and clear. In contrast, the larger loop is not necessarily present in all papers. The larger loop covers the background and the implications components. The scope of its content is automatically wider than the smaller loop. So the larger loop will tend to lead to somewhat bold statements, but still supported by the available data. Many papers might not provide too novel insights, and many authors might not like to write bold statements. So when the larger loop is absent in an abstract, it is not necessarily a bad thing. It is either because the content of the work is narrow, or because the authors prefer to avoid bold statements. Anyway, it is not a negative thing, at least for me. When the larger loop is present, and it is solidly based on the presented data, and it is not exaggerated, then the authors must be confident of the high quality of the entire work presented in the paper. This is a good thing. We can find the beautiful example in the abstract of our Milestone Article 1. Professor's Viewpoint 2. This comment is about the implications component of the abstract. This is in relation to the development of messenger RNA vaccines. We have been reading Milestone Article 1 of the Nobel Laureates. The Laureates' Nobel Prize was based on the work described in this paper and at least 2 other papers, Milestone Articles 2 and 3. What was the Nobel Prize for? According to the official Nobel Prize website, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine 2023 was awarded to Dr. Karikó and Dr. Weissman, quote, for their discoveries concerning nucleoside base modifications that enabled the development of effective messenger RNA vaccines against COVID-19, close quote. So our Milestone Article 1 led to the development of messenger RNA vaccines against COVID-19. Now, a reminder. Just as a reminder, please let me tell you how we selected and named the Milestone Articles 1, 2, and 3. Actually, we did not select them. The Nobel Committee for Physiology or Medicine selected them. What we did was only to find which papers they had selected. In the episode 10, we visited the 2023 Nobel Prize website and found the press release. It shows a brief introduction to the laureates' work. We then located the list of the laureates' publications there. The section called Key Publications listed 3 publications. They are our 3 milestone articles, and we named them by adding the numbers 1, 2, and 3 based on the chronological order of publication. So the first of the 3 papers was Milestone Article 1, published in 2005. The second was Milestone Article 2, published in 2008. And the third was Milestone Article 3, published in 2010. In the episode description, I will show you the link to the episode 10 and the link to the Nobel Prize press release that shows a list of our Milestone Articles 1 through 3. Now, back to the talk. Our Milestone Article 1 led to the development of messenger RNA vaccines. Then, does Milestone Article 1, which is the first paper in the 3-paper series, does it mention messenger RNA vaccines as the future application of the presented work? The implications component of the abstract of Milestone Article 1 would have been the best place to mention that the knowledge obtained from the work could play an important role in developing messenger RNA vaccines. But we cannot find the words vaccine or vaccination in the implications component of the abstract. In fact, we cannot find those words in the abstract. I checked the rest of the Milestone Article 1, and I could not find them anywhere in the paper either. So the authors did not mention vaccines directly in Milestone Article 1. It is still possible that the authors were thinking about the applications to vaccines before or at the time of Milestone Article 1. We can find one hint. We can find it at the end of the discussion section of Milestone Article 1. That is, in the last sentence of the last paragraph of the discussion section of the paper. There, the authors mentioned briefly that the impact of nucleoside modifications on immune responses could, quote, give future directions into the design of therapeutic RNAs, close quote. Here, the term therapeutic RNAs could include messenger RNA vaccines, but at the very least, the authors did not mention vaccines directly. Interestingly, the applications to vaccines were directly mentioned first in the abstract of Milestone Article 2 that was published 3 years after Milestone Article 1. The applications to vaccines were also directly mentioned in Milestone Article 3 that was published 2 years after Milestone Article 2 and 5 years after Milestone Article 1. Milestone Article 3 said the following in the introduction section. Modified RNA suppresses the innate immune responses that are normally triggered by unmodified RNA. This property could be used for, quote, vaccine antigen delivery or other RNA-based therapeutic applications, close quote. Here, the messenger RNA vaccines are described as a part of therapeutic RNAs. But at least on the writings, the words vaccine or vaccination were not in Milestone Article 1, and they appeared in Milestone Articles 2 and 3. What we can learn from this professor's viewpoint, too, is that scientists often develop an outstanding idea slowly over multiple papers in their line of work. Because of this developmental nature of ideas, I find it fun and insightful to read multiple papers written by the same author or the same group of authors. We can see the development of ideas, sometimes sudden onset of ideas, and at other times slow and gradual progression of ideas. The ideas can be developed often along the same line of original thoughts, and at other times along different lines of thoughts branching from the original. I would recommend you read multiple papers written by the same author or the same group of authors. If you are doing it, great. If you have not tried it before, please try it. I'm sure you will enjoy it. Summary. Today, we talked about the second of the 2 loops in an abstract. The second loop opens with the first sentence or the first group of sentences, that is the background component, at the very start of the abstract. And it becomes closed with the last sentence or the last group of sentences, that is the implications component, at the very end of the abstract. Not all abstracts have this second loop, but when it is present, it gives a better overview of the impact of the presented work. We can find one of the best examples in the abstract of our Milestone Article 1. Your action. When you read an abstract of any paper next time, please pay attention to whether or not you can find the second loop in the abstract. Do you like the abstract? Do you like how the rest of the paper is written? Please tell me your experience and how you felt when you read the paper. I would like to hear from you. My email address is ideas@synaptologica.com. Thank you for joining me in today's episode of Foundational Skills in Life Sciences. I'm Dr. Synaptologica. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.